11. "Are you not feeling well then, lass?" Captain Geronin asked. "You've come out of your cabin only to gather your meals, then return there for the rest of the time." Kara looked him directly in the eye. "I am well, Captain. With the King's shield nearing Lut Gholein, I must prepare for my journey from that point on. There is much for me to consider. I apologize if I appear unfriendly to you and your crew." "Not unfriendly, just more distant," he sighed. "Well, if you need anything, just let me know." She needed quite a lot, but nothing with which the good captain could help her. "Thank you for everything." The necromancer felt his eyes on her as she headed for her cabin. Geronin would likely have done anything he could for Kara, regardless of the situation, and she much appreciated that fact. Unfortunately, any aid he might have offered would not have at all helped the enchantress in her present predicament. As she entered the cabin, Kara saw the two undead standing in the far corner, waiting, with the proverbial patience of their kind. Faustin held the gleaming dagger ready, the Vizierai's spell upon it ensuring that the necromancer could do nothing against the pair. The yellowed eyes of the mage stared unblinking at her. Kara could never be certain what Faustin thought, for his expression varied little. Not so with Seyden Trist. The other revenant continually smiled, as if he had some jest he wished to share. Kara also found herself constantly desiring to straighten his head, which ever leaned a little too far to one side or another. The stench of death surrounded them, but so far as she could tell, it had not pervaded any part of the ship beyond her cabin. As a necromancer, the foul smell bothered Kara less than most, but she still would have preferred to do without it. Her studies and her faith had ensured that Kara had dealt almost daily with the realm of the dead, but those encounters had ever been on her own terms. Never before had the tables been turned, that the dead made her come at their beck and call.
"The good captain leaves you to yourself still, I hope,"
Trist gasped. "He is concerned for me, that is all." The wiry ghoul chuckled, a sound like an animal choking on a bone. Perhaps when the man's neck had been broken, a part of the bone there had lodged in his windpipe. It would explain the way he talked. Even though Seyden Trist did not need to breathe, he needed air in order to speak. Of course, with a gaping hole in his throat, Trist's companion, the Vizierai, would forever be silent.
"Let us hope that his concern remains distant from this room."
Faustin pointed to the edge of the bed, a wordless order the dark mage readily understood. Her food held tight in one hand, she perched there, awaiting whatever new command they had of her. So long as the Vizierai held the dagger, his magic kept Kara Nightshadow in thrall. Trist's eyes blinked once, a conscious effort on the part of the corpse. Unlike Faustin, he worked to pretend that some life remained within his decaying husk. As a mage, the gaunt Vizierai no doubt saw the situation in more practical, realistic terms. The fighter, on the other hand, appeared to have been a man much in love with all the aspects of life. Behind the smile, Kara suspected that this ungodly predicament enraged him more than it did his companion.
"Eat."
Under their unwavering gazes, she did. All the while, though, the necromancer rummaged through her memory, trying to recall some bit of knowledge she might use to free herself from all this. That they had not so far touched Kara, much less harmed her in any manner, did not assuage her concerns in the least. The revenants had one goal in mind, to reach their friend, this Norik Vizieran. If at some point it seemed necessary to sacrifice her for the culmination of that goal, Kara felt certain that they would do so without regret. Vizieran had been their partner, their comrade, and yet he had evidently brutally slain both, then taken off with the armor. Seyden Trist had not exactly told her all this, but she had come to that conclusion from the fragments of information garnered from conversations with the talkative ghoul. Trist had never actually even accused Norik, instead only saying that they needed to find their partner to end what had begun in the tomb, and that because Kara had not stayed behind, as they had wished, she would now be a part of their macabre quest. Kara ate in silence, purposely keeping her gaze from the ungodly pair as much as possible. The less she drew their attention, especially that of Trist, the better. Unfortunately, just as she reached the bottom of the bowl, the more vocal revenant suddenly rasped,
Does it taste good?
The peculiar question so caught her by surprise that she had to look at him. What? One pale, peeling finger pointed at the bowl.
The food. Does it taste good?
Some bit remained, more than Kara truly desired at the moment. She considered what she knew of undead, never recalling any with an appetite for fish stew. Human flesh, yes, in some cases, but never fish stew. Still, on the off chance that it might ease tensions a little, the necromancer held out the bowl and in a steady voice asked, "Would you like to try it?" Trist looked at Faustin, who remained the immovable rock. The slimmer ghoul finally stepped forward, seized the food, then immediately returned to his favored spot. Kara had never known that a walking corpse could move with such speed. With decaying fingers, he took some of the remnants and stuck them in his mouth. Satan tried to chew, fragments of fish dropping to the floor. Despite the fact that both he and the mage acted as if living, the dead man's body did not completely function as it had previous to his murder. He suddenly spat out what remained, at the same time a monstrous expression crossing his rotting countenance.
Filth. It tastes of death.
Satan eyed her.
It's too long dead. They should have cooked it less, a lot less.
He considered this crucial matter more, eyes never leaving Kara.
I think maybe they should have not cooked it at all. The fresher, the better, eh?
The raven-haired woman did not reply at first, having no desire whatsoever to prolong a conversation that might turn to exactly what types of meat the ghoul would think tasted best, uncooked. Instead, Kara tried to turn back to the subject of most concern to her, the hunt for Norik Vizaran. You were aboard the Hawksfire, weren't you? You were aboard until whatever happened that caused the crew to abandon her.
Not aboard. Underneath, for the most part.
Underneath? She pictured the two clutching the hull, using their inhuman strength to hold on, even through the most turbulent of waves. Only a revenant could have accomplished such a harrowing effort. What do you mean, for the most part? Satan shrugged, sending his head wobbling for a moment.
We came aboard for a short time, after the fools jumped ship.
What made them leave?
They saw what they didn't like to see.
Not a very helpful answer, but the longer Kara could keep the conversation going, the less time the pair had to think about what else they might need of her and what it might cost the necromancer. Once more, Kara thought about their unholy perseverance. The revenants had managed to nearly catch up with their prey, even latched themselves onto the hull of his vessel, like a pair of lampreys onto a shark. The vision of the two undead clinging to the underside of the Hawksfire throughout the violent storm they had earlier mentioned would forever be seared into the necromancer's imagination. Truly, Norik Vizaran would not escape their brutal justice. And yet, he so far had, even with them within yards of his throat. If you and he were alone aboard the ship, then why is the hunt not yet over? A decidedly grim change came over Trist's smile, managing to make his general appearance even more ghastly than previous.
It should have been.
He would say no more, and when Kara looked to Faustin, his dark visage revealed nothing. She pondered their responses as rapidly as she could, finally deciding to try to play on their failure aboard the Hawksfire. I can be of more help to you, you know. Next time, nothing will go awry. This time, Faustin blinked once. What that meant the necromancer could not say, but the Vigerai's action had been for some specific reason. Satan Trist's eyes narrowed slightly.
You'll be of all the help we need. Trust on that.
But I could be more than your unwilling puppet. I understand what drives you. I understand why you walk the earth. As an ally rather than a prisoner, the possibilities of what you can accomplish grow tenfold and more. Silent, the wiry corpse tossed and caught his own dagger a few times, something he had done often since his arrival. Apparently even death could not break some habits. Kara thought he did it whenever he had to concentrate especially hard.
You understand less than you think.
All I am trying to say is that we need not be adversaries. My spell stirred up your murdered spirits, set you on this quest, and so I feel some responsibility. You seek this Noric Visaran, so do I. Why can we not work as allies? Again, the mage blinked, almost as if he might have wanted to say something, an impossibility, of course. In lieu of that, he glanced down at his companion. The two undead shared a long gaze, which made the enchantress wonder if they communicated in some manner beyond her ken. The grating sound of Satan Trist's unearthly chuckle filled the tiny cabin, but Kara knew better than to hope that Captain Geronin or one of the crew would hear. The Viserai had cast a spell, deadening all sounds within. As far as the men of the King's Shield might be concerned, the necromancer made no more noise than if she now slept peacefully.
My friend, he brings up an amusing point. You, as our good ally, would surely expect your dagger back, eh?
When she had no good reply, Trist added,
Not a bargain we could very much live with, if you know what I mean.
Kara understood very well. Not only did the dagger give them power over her, but it likely served as a focus for that which let them function on the mortal plane. The ritual blade had been what had first summoned the phantasm of Faustin, and the probable result of taking it from them would be that both bodies would simply collapse, the vengeful shade sent back to the afterlife forever. This pair would have none of that.
You'll aid us as we need. You'll serve as the cloak covering the truth from those we meet. You'll do what we can't do in the light of day, where all can see.
Faustin blinked for a third time, a very distressing sign. He had never before taken such a visible interest in their conversations, preferring everything to come from his more vocal companion. Trist rose, ever smiling. The more Kara Nightshadow thought of it, the more she realized that the smile never truly left the slimmer ghoul's face, save when its owner forcefully chose to make it go, as when the food had so disgusted him. What she had taken for humor looked, in part, to simply be what death had frozen on his countenance. Trist would likely be smiling even when he ripped out the heart of his treacherous comrade, Noric.
And as we must have your cooperation, my good friends suggested a way to make you even more amenable to the situation.
Both he and the Viserai approached her. Kara leapt from the bed. You have the dagger. You need no other hold over me.
Faustin believes we do. I am so sorry.
Despite the unlikely chance of anyone hearing her, she opened her mouth to shout. The mage blinked for a fourth time, and no sound escaped the necromancer's lips. Her seeming helplessness both horrified and infuriated the pale woman. Kara knew that there were far more experienced practitioners of her arts that could have turned both undead into silent, obedient servants. A few more years, and perhaps even she would have been able to do so. Instead, the ghouls had turned her into the puppet, and now they sought to further add to her invisible chains. Trist's macabre grin and cold white eyes filled her view. The breath of decay drifted to her nostrils each time the rotting figure spoke.
Give me your left hand, and it'll be less painful."
With no choice left to her, Kara reluctantly obeyed. Seyden Trist took the hand in his own moldering fingers, caressing it almost as if he and the young enchantress had become lovers. Kara felt a chill run up and down her spine at the thought. She had heard such tales before.
"I miss many things about life, woman. Many things."
A heavy hand dropped on his shoulder. Trist nodded as best his crooked neck allowed, then backed away a step. His grip on her hand remained painfully tight, the ghoul now turning it so that the palm showed. Faustin plunged the gleaming dagger into it. Kara gasped, then realized that while she felt discomfort, she did not feel actual pain. She stared in astonishment, noting, and yet not quite believing, the sight before her. More than 2 inches of the curved blade stuck out of the other side of her hand, yet nowhere did she see any trace of blood. A brilliant yellow glow arose from the area where the dagger had penetrated, a glow that completely bathed her palm. The Viserai, at last, tried to say something, but only a thin gasp escaped. Even rewrapping his ruined throat did not work.
"Let me,"
snarled Trist. Eyeing the captive necromancer again, he intoned,
"Our lives are your life. Our deaths are your death. Our fate is your fate, bounded by this dagger and your soul."
With that, Faustin tugged the dagger free. The Viserai thrust the blade toward her face, showing Kara that no blood stained it. He then indicated her hand. She studied her palm, could not even make out the slightest scar. The murdered mage had summoned powerful sorcery for his terrible spell. Trist pushed her toward the bed, indicating the young woman sit.
"We are one now. If we fail, you fail. If we should perish or be betrayed, you, too, will suffer. Remember that, always."
Kara could not help but shiver slightly. They had bound her to them in a manner far more absolute than that which their possession of the dagger had previously done. If anything at all happened to the pair before they could accomplish their dreadful task, Kara's soul would even be dragged back to the underworld with them, forever doomed to wander without rest. "You did not have to do that." She looked for some glimmer of sympathy, but found none. Nothing mattered more than avenging what had been done to them. "I would have helped you."
"Now we can be certain you will."
Trist and Faustin retreated to the far corner again. The ritual dagger gleamed golden.
"Now there'll be no fear of tricks when you meet with the sorcerer."
Despite what they had just done to her, Kara stiffened at the last words. "Sorcerer? In Lut Gholein?" Faustin nodded. Seyden Trist cocked his head more to the side, or perhaps the weight on what remained of his neck simply had proven too much for the moment.
"Yes, a Viserai like my friend here, an old man with much knowledge, and known by the name Drognan."
"My name is Drognan," the cloaked mage remarked as he swept into the chamber. "Please be seated, Norak Viseran." As he gazed around the Viserai's sanctum, the sense of unease that had crept over Norak earlier returned 1,000 times stronger. Not only had this elderly but certainly formidable figure drawn the veteran to him with ease, but Drognan understood well exactly what had happened to Norak, including the quest by the cursed armor. "I always knew that the curse of Bartok could not be contained forever," he informed Norak as the soldier seated himself in an old, weathered chair. "Always knew that." They had come to this dim chamber after a short trek into even less savory areas of the otherwise rich, energetic kingdom. The doorway through which the pair had entered had seemed to have led into an abandoned, rat-infested building, but once through, the interior had shifted, transforming into an ancient but still stately edifice, which Drognan informed him had once been rumored to be the home of Horazan, the bloody warlord's brother. It had been abandoned at some point long after the disappearance of Bartek's brother, but the spells protecting it from curious eyes had continued to serve their designated purpose, until Drognan had outwitted them while searching for the tomb of the very one who had cast them. Deciding that no one had a more appropriate right to lay claim to the magical abode than himself, the Viserai had moved in, then continued his research. Through an empty hall, whose floor had been covered in a rich tapestry of mosaic patterns that included animals, warriors, and even legendary structures, they had finally reached this particular room, the one that the old mage most called his home. Shelf upon shelf bordered the walls, and on each of those shelves had been arranged more books and scrolls than a simple soldier such as Norik could have ever dreamed existed in all the world. He could read, but few of the titles had been written in the common tongue. Other than the books, though, only a few other items decorated the shelves, among the most interesting being a single polished skull and a few jars of a dark-colored liquid. As for the room itself, its decor consisted chiefly of a well-crafted wooden table and two old but stately chairs. It had all the look of a chamberlain's office, such as might have been found in the Sultan's palace. Hardly what Norik would have expected from a Viserai, or any other sorcerer for that matter. Like most common folk, he had expected to see all sorts of horrifying and grisly objects, the so-called tools of Drognan's trade. "I am a researcher," the wrinkled figure added suddenly, as if he needed to explain his surroundings. A researcher who had been the reason why no guards had stopped Norik on the dock. A researcher who, with but a simple use of his power, had seized the minds of half a dozen soldiers and directed them to bring the foreigner to him. A researcher who dabbled in dark arts, knew of the deadly enchantments contained in Bartek's armor, and who had apparently overcome most of them with ease. And that, more than anything else, had been why Norik had willingly followed him here. For the first time since the tomb, hope had arisen that someone could at last free him of the parasitic suit. "It came to me in a vision little more than a week or two ago." The sorcerer ran wizened fingers along a row of books, obviously searching for one in particular. "The legacy of Bartek rising anew. I could not believe it at first, naturally, but when it repeated itself, I knew the vision to be a true one." Since then, Drognan continued, he had performed spell after spell to discover the meaning, and in the process had uncovered Norik's secret, and the journey the armor had forced upon him. Although he had not been able to observe the veteran during the long trek from the tomb, the elderly mage had at least been able to keep track of where the trail seemed to lead. Soon it became apparent that both man and armor would soon be in the Viserai's very midst. A fortuitous event as far as Drognan had been concerned. The sorcerer pulled free one vast tome from the shelf, then placed it gently on a table in the center of the chamber. He began thumbing through it, still talking. "It surprised me not at all, young man, to find out that the armor sought out Lutgolain. If some lingering spectral aspect of Bartek hoped to fulfill his last wishes, then certainly traveling to this fair kingdom makes perfect sense, especially for two particular reasons." Norik cared little for what those reasons might be, more concerned with that which the Viserai had hinted might be possible to obtain, the fighter's freedom from the suit. "Is the spell in that book?" The aged sorcerer looked up. "What spell?" "The one to separate me from this, of course." Norik banged the breastplate with one hand. "This damned armor! You said you had some way you could peel it off of me." "I believe my earlier words to you were closer to, if you hope to live, you will do exactly as I desire." "But the armor! Damn you, wizard! That's all I care about. Cast a spell. Get it off of me while it's still subdued." Looking down on him as a father might a whining child, the silver-haired mage responded, "Of the armor, while I cannot as yet remove it, I assure you that you need not worry about its other enchantments while I have it under my power." Reaching into one of the deep pockets of his robe, Drognan removed what at first seemed a short stick, but quickly revealed itself to be much, much, much longer. In truth, by the time the sorcerer had it freed from the pocket, the stick had swollen in size and length, the latter a good 4 feet and more, and revealed itself as a spell staff, covered in elaborate and glittering runes. "Observe." Drognan pointed the staff at his guest. Norik, who had traveled with Faustin long enough to know what it meant to be on this end of the magical staff, leapt to his feet. "Wait!" "Furiosic!" shouted the mage. Flames shot toward the soldier, flames that spread as they moved. A blanket of fire sought to envelop Norik. Just a few scant inches from his nose, the fire abruptly died out. At first, Norik believed that the suit had saved him again, but then he heard the wrinkled figure chuckle. "Not to worry, young man, not even a hair singed. You see now what I mean? My control over the armor is complete. Had I so desired, I could have left you a roasted skeleton, and even the suit could not have saved you. Only my canceling of the spell protected you now. Now do sit back down." The searing heat still burning his nostrils, Norik slumped back into the old chair. Drognan's unnerving display had proven 2 things. The first had been that what the elderly sorcerer had claimed had been true. With his magic, he had subdued the enchantments of the armor. The second had been that Norik had evidently placed himself into the hands of a somewhat ruthless and likely half-mad wizard. Yet, what else could he have done? "There is a bottle of wine next to you. Pour yourself some. Calm your nerves." The offer itself did little to calm Norik down, for both the bottle mentioned and the table upon which it now sat had not been next to the veteran a second earlier. Still, he kept himself from showing any uncertainty as he first filled a goblet, then sipped some of the contents. "That should be better." One hand spread over a page in the massive book. Drognan peered at his guest. The staff rested loosely in his other hand. "Do you know anything of the history of Lut Gholein?" "Not much." The wizard stepped away from the book. "One fact I will impart upon you immediately, a fact I think central to your situation. Before the rise of Lut Gholein, this region served briefly as a colony of the Empire of Kegistan. There existed Viserai temples and a military presence. However, even by the time of the brothers Bartok and Horazan, the Empire had begun to pull back from this side of the sea. Viserai influence remained strong, but a physical presence proved too costly for the most part." An almost childlike smile spread across the dark, narrow features. "It is all quite fascinating, really." Norik, who under the circumstances cared little about history lessons, frowned. Seeming not to notice, Drognan continued. "After the war, after Bartok's defeat and death, the Empire never regained its glory. Worse yet, its greatest sorcerer, its shining light, had suffered too much in body and, most pointedly, mind. I speak, of course, of Horazan." "Who came to Lut Gholein?" Norik helpfully added, hoping by doing so that it would assist the rambling elder to reach whatever point he sought to make. Then, perhaps then, Drognan would finally get around to helping the fighter. "Yes, exactly. Lut Gholein. Not named that yet, of course. Yes, Horazan, who had suffered so terribly even in victory, came to this land, tried to settle into a life of studious pursuit, and then, as I informed you earlier, just disappeared." The veteran soldier waited for his host to continue, but Drognan only stared back, as if what he had just said explained all. "You do not understand, I see," the robed sorcerer finally commented. I understand that Horazon came to this land, and now the cursed armor of his hated brother has come here too. I also understand that I've had to watch men slaughtered, demons rise from the earth, and know that my life's no longer my own, but that of a dead demon lord. Norik rose again, having had enough. Drognan could have easily raised the staff and slain him on the spot, but his own patience had come to an end. Either help me or slay me, Vizieri. I've no time for history lessons. I want release from this hell.
Sit.
Norik sat, but this time not of his own accord. A darkness crossed Drognan's features, a darkness that reminded the hapless soldier that this man had readily taken control of not only half a dozen guards, but the damnable suit, too.
I will save you, despite yourself, Norik Vizarin. Although certainly no servant of the Vizieri are you, despite that ancient name. I will save you, while at the same time you will lead me to that for which I have searched for more than half my life.
Whatever spell Drognan used pressed the fighter so tight into the chair that Norik could barely speak.
What do you mean? Lead you to what?
Drognan gave him a nearly incredulous look.
Why, what must surely be buried somewhere under the city itself, and what the armor must also be seeking. The tomb of Bartek's brother, Horazon. The legendary arcane sanctuary.